My son-in-law looked me in the eye for 18 months and told me my daughter was happy. She was teaching children in South Korea. He said, living her dream. But my daughter wasn't in South Korea. My daughter was 40 minutes from my house, and she had been begging someone, anyone, to help her. My name is Margaret. I'm 67 years old. I live in a small brick house in eastern Pennsylvania, the same house my late husband built with his own hands in 1986. I raised 2 children in this house. My son, Paul, lives in Arizona now. We talk on holidays. We're polite, but my daughter, Elena was my heartbeat. From the time she was a little girl, Elena was different. She was soft. She was the kind of child who cried when she saw a bird with a broken wing. She would sit with me in the kitchen and tell me about her day in such detail that an hour would pass and we wouldn't even notice. When her father died in 2014, it was Elena who sat beside me every single night for 3 months. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. She just held my hand and let me cry. Elena became a teacher. 3rd grade. She loved it. She would come home and tell me about the kids like they were her own. She had this light in her, this warmth that made everyone around her feel safe. I used to think the world didn't deserve someone like her. And then she met Victor. Victor Hale. He was tall, good-looking in a sharp kind of way. He wore nice suits and had a firm handshake. He worked in pharmaceutical sales and made good money. When he walked into a room, he commanded attention. People listened when he spoke. At first, I thought he was wonderful. He brought me flowers the first time Elena brought him to the house. He pulled out her chair at dinner. He called me Mom within 2 months of dating her. I remember thinking, finally, someone who sees how special my daughter is. They got married in the fall of 2019. Small ceremony. Beautiful. Elena wore her grandmother's pearls. I cried the whole time, not because I was sad, because I thought my girl had found her person. I was wrong. The changes were slow. So slow, I almost didn't notice. First, Elena stopped coming to Sunday dinners. Victor said they were busy. Then she stopped calling as often. When she did call, something in her voice was different. Quieter, flatter, like the color had drained out of her words. I asked her once, "Sweetheart, is everything okay?" She paused, just a second too long. Then she said, "Of course, Mom, everything's fine. But I'm her mother, and mothers know. We always know. We just don't always trust what we feel." By early 2021, I was seeing Elena maybe once a month. She had lost weight. Her eyes looked tired. She didn't laugh the way she used to. And Victor was always there, always standing just close enough, always answering questions she could have answered herself. One time, at my kitchen table, Elena started to tell me about a problem at her school. She was mid-sentence when Victor interrupted her. "Elena, that's not really interesting, is it?" He smiled when he said it. Smooth, casual, like it was a joke. Elena stopped talking. She looked down at her plate, and she didn't finish the story. I stared at him. He smiled back at me like nothing had happened. That was the first time I felt something cold settle in my chest. Something I couldn't name yet, but it was there. Then in August of 2021, Victor called me. Not Elena. Victor. "Mom, I've got some exciting news. Elena has been offered a teaching position in South Korea, an international school in Seoul. It's an incredible opportunity." I was confused. Elena hadn't mentioned anything about wanting to go abroad. She loved her school. She loved her students. "Can I talk to her?" I asked. "She's packing right now. You know how she gets, scatterbrained." He laughed. "She'll call you tonight." She did call, but it was brief. Her voice was thin, almost mechanical. "Mom, it's an amazing opportunity. I have to do this. I'll call you when I get settled." "Elena, are you sure? This is so sudden." "I'm sure, Mom. I love you." That was the last time I heard her voice clearly. The last time it actually sounded like her. After that, everything went through text messages, and even those became strange. The texts were polite, too polite. They read like someone writing a letter to a stranger, not a daughter talking to her mother. "Hi, Mom. Everything is great here. The kids are wonderful. The weather is nice. I hope you're well. No detail, no warmth, no stories about her students, no asking about my garden or my hip or whether I'd finished the book she gave me. I tried calling. Every time it went to voicemail. When I texted asking to video call, the reply was always the same. Bad connection here. We'll try soon. Soon never came. I told myself she was busy. I told myself international time zones were hard. I told myself she was living her dream and I should be happy for her. But every night, I sat in my living room and stared at my phone. And every night, the feeling in my chest got colder. 6 months passed. Then a year. Then a year and a half. Victor would call me every few weeks. Always cheerful. Always with updates. She's doing great, Mom. She loves the school. She might extend her contract. When is she coming home for a visit? I asked once. He paused. International flights are expensive, and she's so busy. Maybe next year. I'll pay for the ticket, I said. Another pause. Longer this time. I'll let her know, Mom. That's sweet of you. Nothing ever came of it. I started to feel like I was losing my mind. I would lie awake at night running conversations through my head. Was I being paranoid? Was I being a clingy, overbearing mother? Maybe Elena just needed space. Maybe she was happy, and I was a problem. Then, in February of 2023, something happened that changed everything. Victor called and asked if he could store some of Elena's old boxes in my garage, things from her classroom. He said she didn't need them in Korea, and he was cleaning out the spare room. I said yes. He dropped off 4 cardboard boxes on a Saturday morning. He was in and out in 10 minutes. Didn't even sit down. Didn't even take off his coat. The boxes sat in my garage for 3 weeks. I didn't touch them at first. They were Elena's things, and it felt wrong somehow. But one cold Tuesday evening, I went out to get a bag of salt for the walkway, and I saw the boxes sitting there, and something pulled me toward them. I opened the first box. Textbooks, binders, old lesson plans, normal. The second box had classroom decorations, a poster she'd made that said, "Reading is a superpower." I ran my fingers over her handwriting and felt my throat tighten. The third box had more school supplies, markers, stickers, a stapler shaped like a frog that I'd given her as a joke years ago. The fourth box was mostly papers, old worksheets, report cards she'd saved. I was about to close it when I noticed something at the very bottom, a small envelope, sealed, no name on the front. I almost didn't open it, but something told me to, something deep and old and desperate. Inside was a single piece of paper, folded twice. Elena's handwriting, shaky, uneven, like she'd written in a hurry or in the dark. It said, "Mom, if you ever find this, please listen. I am not going to South Korea. Victor is sending me to a place called Briarfield. It's a private residential facility near Greendale. He told the doctors I had a nervous breakdown. I didn't. He's been telling them I'm delusional. He's been telling them I make things up. He has power of attorney. He changed the paperwork after Dad died. Mom, I'm not crazy. Please come find me. Please. I love you. I'm so sorry. Elena." I read it 3 times. Then I read it again. Then I sat down on the cold garage floor, and I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking so badly. The paper was trembling like a leaf. I pressed it against my chest, and I made a sound I didn't recognize. A sound that came from somewhere ancient and broken inside me. My daughter, my Elena, 40 minutes away, for 18 months. While I sat in my living room staring at my phone, I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive to Victor's house and tear the door off its hinges. I wanted to call the police. I wanted to do everything at once. But I didn't. I sat on that cold floor for a long time, and something inside me shifted. The panic didn't go away, but something harder grew underneath it. Something patient. Something sharp. Because I understood something in that moment. If I went to Victor screaming, he would deny it. He would call me confused. He would call me the crazy one. He had power of attorney. He had paperwork. He had doctors on his side. If I was going to save my daughter, I had to be smarter than him. I said nothing, but I understood everything. The next morning, I called my attorney, Gerald Marsh. He's been my lawyer for 20 years. He handled my husband's estate. I told him everything. I showed him the note. Gerald was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Margaret, if what this note says is true, this is false imprisonment. This is fraud. This is criminal." "I know," I said. "What do I do?" "You don't do anything yet. Let me make some calls." That was a Wednesday. By Friday, Gerald had confirmed that a facility called Briarfield Behavioral Health existed near Greendale. It was a private, long-term residential treatment center. The kind of place that costs thousands of dollars a month. The kind of place where people go in and nobody asks questions about when they come out. Gerald made a discreet inquiry. He didn't use Elena's name. He asked about admission procedures, about legal authority, about visitation rights. What he learned made my blood run cold. A patient admitted under a guardian's power of attorney could be held indefinitely. Visitation could be restricted by the guardian. Communication could be limited if the attending physician deemed it counterproductive to treatment. Victor hadn't just sent Elena away. He had built a cage. A legal, medical, airtight cage. How did he get power of attorney? I asked Gerald. Gerald pulled the county records. And there it was. In 2020, Elena had signed a durable power of attorney naming Victor as her agent in the event of incapacity. Gerald looked at the signature. Then he looked at me. Margaret, the notary who witnessed the signature, lost their license 6 months later for fraud. My jaw tightened. Can we prove the signature was coerced? We can try. But first, we need to see Elena. And we need to do it without Victor knowing. That became the plan. Quiet, careful, methodical. I spent the next 2 weeks doing things I never thought a 67-year-old woman would do. I researched guardianship law. I read about conservatorship abuse. I printed documents. I organized files. I barely slept. Gerald filed an emergency petition with the county court requesting a welfare check on Elena and a review of her involuntary commitment. He cited the note. He cited the fraudulent notary. He cited my testimony as her mother that Elena showed no signs of mental illness before her supposed breakdown. The judge assigned a court-appointed psychiatrist to evaluate Elena independently. While all of this was happening, I did something else. Something personal. I went to Victor's house. He opened the door with that same smooth smile. "Mom, what a surprise. Come in." I sat at his kitchen table. The kitchen that used to be my daughter's. The kitchen where she used to make banana bread on Sunday mornings. I looked around. There were women's shoes by the door. Not Elena's size. A wine glass with lipstick in the sink. A jacket on the hook that smelled like perfume I didn't recognize. He was living with someone. In my daughter's house. While my daughter sat in a facility 40 minutes away. "Have you heard from Elena?" I asked. My voice was steady. I had practiced it in the mirror that morning. "Yeah, she's great. Thinking about doing another year. She really loves it over there." He looked right at me. Not a flicker of guilt. Not a shadow of doubt. He lied to me with the ease of someone ordering coffee. I smiled. "That's wonderful. I'm so proud of her." He smiled back. "She'd love to hear that." I finished my tea. I stood up. I thanked him. And I walked out of that house, knowing exactly what kind of man he was. A man who had locked away my daughter and erased her from her own life. A man who was spending her money, living in her house, sleeping with another woman, and telling her mother fairy tales. I said nothing. I just drove home, and I waited. 3 weeks later, the court-appointed psychiatrist visited Briarfield. Her name was Dr. Anita Reeves. She spent 4 hours with Elena. She reviewed Elena's medical file. She interviewed the attending physician. She spoke with the nursing staff. Her report was 17 pages long. I have it memorized. The key finding was this. The patient shows no signs of psychosis, delusion, or any psychiatric condition warranting involuntary long-term commitment. The patient is coherent, oriented, emotionally stable, and expresses a clear and consistent desire to leave the facility. The patient reports that her admission was arranged by her spouse under false pretenses. This evaluator recommends immediate release and a full investigation into the circumstances of her admission. when Gerald read me that paragraph over the phone. I cried so hard I had to sit down on the floor again. But this time, the tears were different. The judge issued an emergency order. Elena was to be released within 48 hours. Victor's power of attorney was suspended pending investigation. A temporary restraining order was issued against him. I drove to Briarfield on a Thursday morning in March. Gerald came with me, so did a victim's advocate from the county. The facility was a large, beige building surrounded by a tall iron fence. It looked clean, professional, respectable, and that made it worse, because behind those clean walls, my daughter had been held for 18 months, drugged, isolated, told that her own perceptions were wrong. They brought her to a room near the front entrance. When the door opened, I saw her. She was thin, thinner than I'd ever seen her. Her hair was longer, unwashed, pulled back in a loose ponytail. She was wearing gray sweatpants and a white t-shirt that was too big for her. She looked 10 years older than she was. But her eyes, when she saw me, her eyes went wide, and then they filled with tears. Mom. That one word broke me open. I crossed the room, and I held her. She collapsed into me. She grabbed fistfuls of my sweater, and she sobbed. Deep, guttural sobs that shook her whole body. She kept saying the same thing over and over. You found it. You found the note. You found it. I found it, baby. I whispered. I found it. And I'm here. And you're coming home. She pulled back and looked at me. Her face was wet. Her lips were trembling. He told them I was crazy, Mom. He told them I was making things up. He told them I was a danger to myself. They gave me pills. They wouldn't let me call you. I wrote that note the night before he brought me here. I hid it in the box because I knew he'd never look through my school things. He never cared about my teaching. I held her face in my hands. I know, sweetheart. I know everything now. Does he know I'm getting out? Not yet, I said, and I allowed myself one small, hard smile. Not yet. Here's what happened next. Gerald didn't just get Elena released. He went further, much further. First, the power of attorney. The notary who had witnessed Elena's signature had already been flagged for fraud. Gerald subpoenaed records showing that the notarization had taken place at a time when Elena was at her school, verified by time-stamped attendance logs. The signature had been forged. Victor had fabricated the entire document. Second, the money. While Elena was locked away, Victor had systematically drained her savings account, her teacher's retirement fund, and a small inheritance she'd received from her father, over $140,000. Gone. Spent on his car, his new girlfriend, restaurant dinners, a vacation to Cancun. Gerald traced every dollar. Third, the house. Elena had purchased a house before the marriage with money from her father's estate. It was in her name. Victor had been living there rent-free, treating it as his own, while his wife sat in a facility wearing borrowed sweatpants. We filed a civil suit for financial fraud, forgery, and emotional distress. Gerald also referred the case to the district attorney, who opened a criminal investigation. Victor was served papers on a Tuesday. I know because Gerald told me. He turned white, Gerald said, completely white. Then he asked who was behind it. I told him his mother-in-law sent her regards. I won't pretend I didn't enjoy hearing that. Victor tried to fight it. Of course he did. He hired a lawyer. He claimed Elena had willingly entered Briarfield. He claimed the power of attorney was legitimate. He claimed the money was shared marital assets. Every single argument fell apart. The forged notarization was verified by a handwriting expert. The Briarfield staff confirmed that Elena had repeatedly asked to leave and been denied by her guardian. Phone records showed that Victor had been sending texts from Elena's old phone, the phone he'd kept, pretending to be her, pretending to be my daughter, typing those flat, soulless messages that had kept me up at night for 18 months. He had texted me from her phone, over and over, for a year and a half, pretending to be her, while she sat in a room 38 miles away, wondering if anyone would ever come. The criminal trial lasted 4 days. Victor was charged with fraud, forgery, false imprisonment, and financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. His lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal. The judge wasn't interested. Victor was sentenced to 7 years in state prison. When the verdict was read, he looked at Elena. She was sitting in the front row beside me. He opened his mouth like he was going to say something, maybe an apology, maybe another lie. Elena didn't look at him. She looked straight ahead, calm, still, like a woman who had survived a war and didn't owe her captor a single glance. I put my hand on her knee. She put her hand on mine. That was enough. After the trial, we sold the house. Elena didn't want to live there anymore. I didn't blame her. We put the money into a new account in her name only. Gerald helped her set up protections, trusts, legal safeguards, everything. No one would ever have that kind of power over her again. Elena moved in with me, into her old room, the room with the lavender curtains she'd picked out when she was 14. She slept there for the first week and barely came out. I brought her soup and tea and sat outside her door and read aloud from the books she used to love. Slowly, she started coming back. Not all at once. In pieces. A laugh here. A story there. One morning, she came downstairs and made banana bread. She didn't say anything about it. She just set a slice in front of me and sat down. I looked at her. She looked at me, and we both cried, but softly this time. The kind of crying that washes things clean. She went back to teaching 6 months later. Different school. Fresh start. The principal told me later that the kids adored her. Of course they did. She was Elena. People ask me sometimes how I stayed so calm. How I didn't lose my mind when I found that note. How I didn't drive to Victor's house that night and do something I couldn't take back. I'll tell you the truth. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I've lived 67 years on this earth. And if those years taught me anything, it's this: rage is loud, but patience is lethal. A man like Victor expects screaming. He expects chaos. He knows how to manipulate emotions. He's been doing it his whole life. What he doesn't expect is silence. What he doesn't expect is a 67-year-old woman sitting quietly in her kitchen, building a case file, making phone calls, reading legal statutes with a magnifying glass and a cup of chamomile tea.